The transport ship's doors opened with a hiss and Jinho stepped onto the platform. His boots touched alien ground for the first time. The air smelled different here, cleaner somehow with a faint metallic taste. Above him, two suns hung in a purple sky. This was Viridian Prime, home to the most famous military academy in the galaxy. Jinho picked up his single bag and walked toward the main building. Other cadets were arriving too, but they looked nothing like him. A massive creature with gray skin and 4 arms walked past, nearly knocking Jinho over without even noticing. Another cadet had blue scales and moved so fast it was just a blur. A third stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in what looked like natural armor plating. Jinho was just a human. Average height, average build. 2 arms, no scales. No armor, no claws. Just skin and bone and the standard issue uniform that hung a bit loose on his frame. A voice called out from behind him. Jinho turned to see one of the 4-armed creatures approaching. This one had red markings on its face and wore the same cadet uniform. "You are the human, yes?" the creature asked. Its voice was deep and rumbling. "Yes, I'm Jinho Park. I am Torvik. We share sleeping quarters." Torvik looked down at Jinho with what might have been concern. "I should warn you, human. Many cadets leave in the first week. The training is very hard, even for Kralax like me." "I'll manage," Jinho said, trying to sound confident. Torvik made a noise that sounded like rocks grinding together. Maybe it was a laugh. "We shall see." The first day began with physical assessments in a huge training hall. Hundreds of cadets gathered, representing dozens of species from across the known galaxy. Jinho had never seen so many different types of beings in one place. An instructor stepped forward. He was built like a tank, with dark red skin and scars covering his arms and face. His eyes swept across the assembled cadets with the cold efficiency of someone who had seen 1,000 recruits come and go. "I am Drill Master Vexnar," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "You are here because your species believes you are warriors. Today we learn the truth." The assessments began. One by one, cadets demonstrated their abilities. A Kralax cadet lifted weights that must have weighed half a ton. A reptilian species completed a sprint so fast the timing equipment struggled to register it. A floating jellyfish-like creature demonstrated telekinetic powers by hurling objects across the room without touching them. When Jinho's turn came for the weightlifting test, he managed to lift the starting weight. Barely. The bar shook in his hands. Several cadets watching from the sidelines exchanged glances. One laughed quietly. The running test was worse. Jinho finished in the bottom 5%. His lungs burned and his legs felt like rubber. Then came combat assessment. Vexnar called cadets forward in pairs to demonstrate basic striking technique on training pads. These weren't ordinary pads. They were equipped with sensors that measured impact force, speed, and technique. The results displayed on a large screen for everyone to see. Jinho watched as each cadet took their turn. Even the smallest aliens generated impressive numbers. The Kralax cadets hit so hard the pads made thunderous booming sounds. A slim, elegant species with 6 fingers struck with such speed that their hands blurred. "Jinho Park, step forward." The hall went quiet. Every eye turned toward the human. Jinho walked to the training pad, very aware of how many beings were watching. His heart hammered in his chest. Vexnar stood beside the pad, arms crossed. "Show me a basic strike, your strongest punch." Jinho took a breath. He had trained for this back on Earth. Months of preparation in the gym, working with the best coaches humanity could provide. He had practiced this punch 1,000 times. He set his stance, pulled back his fist, and threw everything he had into the strike. His knuckles connected with the pad. The impact felt solid. For a moment, Jinho thought maybe, just maybe, he had done well. Then he saw the numbers on the screen. They were low, very low. Lower than every other cadet who had gone before him. Lower than species half his size. The pad had barely registered his hit. Silence filled the training hall. Then Vexnar started to laugh. It was a deep, rumbling sound that echoed off the walls. A few other cadets joined in. The laughter spread like fire through dry grass. "This is what the legendary humans send us?" Vexnar said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "The species that claims to have conquered their entire planet? That fought wars for thousands of years?" He shook his head. "Perhaps the council made an error in accepting your application." Jinho's face burned. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. Every instinct told him to walk away, to leave this place and never come back. But another part of him, a stubborn part that had gotten him through every difficult moment in his life, refused to move. "Sir," Jinho said quietly. "Request permission to try again." The laughter grew louder. Even Torvik, his bunkmate, looked away in what might have been embarrassment. Vexnar held up one clawed hand and the laughter stopped. He studied Jinho with those cold eyes. "You wish to embarrass yourself twice?" "I wish to try again, sir." For a long moment, Vexnar said nothing. Then he stepped aside. "Very well. Show me this second attempt." Jinho approached the pad again. His hands were shaking now from adrenaline or fear or anger, he could not tell. He set his stance. He took a breath. He threw the punch. The numbers were almost identical to the first attempt. Maybe slightly worse. This time no one laughed. The silence was somehow worse. It was the silence of pity, of beings watching someone fail and feeling embarrassed for them. "Get back in line," Vexnar said. His voice was not cruel now, just tired, disappointed. Jinho returned to his place among the other cadets. None of them would meet his eyes. He had become invisible. Worse than invisible. He had become the example of what failure looked like. That night in the quarters he shared with Torvik, Jinho lay on his bunk and stared at the ceiling. The Kralex was already asleep, snoring like distant thunder. Jinho's hands still hurt from hitting the pad. His pride hurt worse, but he did not cry. He did not pack his bag. He did not request transport back to Earth. Instead, he made a decision. If the galaxy expected humans to be weak, he would prove them wrong. He did not know how yet. He only knew that giving up was not an option. Tomorrow, the real training would begin. And Jinho would be ready. The first week at the academy was brutal. Every morning began before dawn with running drills. Jinho finished last every single time. Combat training left him covered in bruises. Strength exercises showed him just how weak he was compared to everyone else. Other cadets stopped bothering to learn his name. To them, he was just the human or sometimes the weak one. Torvik tried to be kind in his own way. He would slow down during runs so Jinho was not completely alone at the back. He shared tips about which instructors to avoid and which meals in the cafeteria were actually edible. But even Torvik seemed confused about why Jinho stayed. "You could go home," Torvik said one evening. "There is no shame. This place is not meant for your kind." "My kind survived on Earth," Jinho replied, wrapping ice around his swollen knuckles. "We'll survive here too." By the second week, Jinho had developed a routine. While other cadets rested after training, he went to the academy library. The building was old, filled with data terminals and actual physical books from 100 different worlds. Most cadets never visited. They relied on their natural abilities and did not see the need to study. Jinho studied everything. He read about anatomy, about the weak points in Kralex armor plating. He learned that the fast reptilian species tired quickly in cold temperatures. He discovered that the floating jellyfish creatures had excellent telekinetic powers but almost no physical durability. Knowledge became his weapon. On his third week, Jinho met Hana. She was human, older than him by maybe 10 years, with short black hair and the calm demeanor of someone who had seen much. She worked as a medical officer at the academy, one of only 3 humans on the entire base. Jinho had come to the medical bay after a particularly rough combat drill left him limping. Hana examined his leg with expert hands, then applied a healing gel that reduced the swelling almost immediately. "You're Jinho Park," she said. It was not a question. "Everyone knows about the weak human," Jinho said bitterly. "Everyone knows about the human who asked to punch twice," Hana corrected. She sat down across from him. That took courage. Stupid courage maybe, but courage nonetheless. Despite himself, Jinho smiled. "Thanks, I think." Hana pulled up a chair. "I've been watching you. You train longer than anyone else. You study when others rest. You're doing everything right, but you're using the wrong approach." "What do you mean?" "You're trying to match them at their strengths. But humans don't win by being stronger or faster. We win by being stubborn and adaptable." She leaned forward. "Do you know why humans are unique in the galaxy?" Jinho shook his head. "Most species evolved on stable worlds, consistent gravity, few predators, steady climate. Their bodies reached an optimal form and stayed there. But Earth?" Hana's eyes lit up. Earth was chaos, extreme weather, deadly animals, changing environments. Humans had to adapt constantly just to survive. "I don't understand how that helps me here." Your body can change, Jinho. Not overnight, but faster than any other species in this academy. Push yourself to the limit and your muscles grow stronger. Your bones become denser. Your nervous system gets faster. It's called adaptive stress response, and humans have the most aggressive version in the known galaxy. But everyone's muscles grow with training, Jinho said. Not like ours. A Kralax trains for years to gain 10% more strength. A human can double their strength in months if they train correctly. The other species have biological limits they rarely exceed. We have limits too, but our bodies fight to push past them. We evolved to survive the unsurvivable. Jinho sat back, processing this. So I just need to train harder? You need to train smarter and harder. Learn to push past pain, past exhaustion, past the point where your mind says stop. Hana handed him a datapad. I've compiled research on human physiology. Read it. Understand what your body can do. Then make it do those things. That night, Jinho read everything on the datapad. He learned about adrenaline, the chemical that let humans lift cars off trapped children. He read about soldiers who marched for days without sleep. He studied athletes who broke records by refusing to accept that impossible meant anything. He learned that human muscles could operate in two modes. Normal mode, where the brain limited strength to protect the body from injury, and emergency mode, where those limits vanished. The problem was accessing that emergency mode deliberately. Jinho began training differently. He stopped comparing himself to others. Instead, he focused on beating his own previous records. Every day he tried to run a little faster, lift a little more weight, hit the practice pad a little harder. He also met Rix during his 4th week. Rix was small, barely reaching Jinho's waist with large eyes and thin arms. His species, the Ven, were known for their intelligence, not their combat ability. Like Jinho, Rix struggled with the physical demands of the academy. They met in the library. Rix was studying energy distribution and martial arts strikes. Jinho was reading about leverage and body mechanics. You're the human, Rix said, looking up from his terminal. I'm Jinho. I'm Rix. I saw your first day assessment. The small alien tilted his head. Everyone laughed at you. They laugh at me too. But you came back the next day. Why? Because I'm not done yet, Jinho said simply. Rix made a clicking sound that might have been approval. Good answer. Want to train together? 2 weak beings might equal 1 strong one. Jinho smiled. Sure, they made an odd pair. Rix helped Jinho understand the physics behind effective strikes. How to transfer energy from the ground through the body. How to time movements for maximum impact. In return, Jinho helped Rix with the physical exercises, spotting him during weight training and running beside him during drills. Slowly, over weeks, Jinho began to improve. His run times got faster. His strength numbers crept upward. He would never match the natural abilities of the other species, but the gap was narrowing. More importantly, something was changing inside him. The constant training, the pushing past pain, the refusal to quit even when every muscle screamed for rest. It was rewiring something fundamental. His body was adapting, just like Hana said it would. By the end of his 5th week, Jinho could complete the morning run without finishing last. His combat scores improved from terrible to merely bad. Other cadets started to notice. Not with respect, not yet. But the mockery had mostly stopped. Torvik commented on it one evening. You are different than when you arrived, human. Stronger. I'm learning, Jinho replied. Perhaps. Or perhaps humans are more capable than we believed. Torvik's forearms crossed thoughtfully. There is an old Kralax saying, beware the enemy who returns stronger after each defeat. I think this applies to your kind. Jinho lay in his bunk that night, exhausted but satisfied. He thought about Hana's words, about Earth being a death world that forged humans into survivors, about the ability to adapt and overcome. He looked at his hands. They were calloused now, scarred from training. But they were also stronger, faster, more capable. The academy had tried to break him. Instead, it was making him into something more. The announcement came during morning assembly in the 5th week. Vexnar stood before the assembled cadets, his scarred face showing no emotion. In 2 days you will face the crucible, he said. 1 week in the wilderness. Limited supplies, combat simulations, survival challenges. Teams of 6 assigned randomly. 30% of cadets fail this test every year. Some require medical evacuation. Some simply quit. His eyes swept across the crowd. We will learn who among you are true warriors." The cadets buzzed with nervous energy. Jinho felt his stomach tighten. He had improved, yes, but was it enough? That evening, team assignments appeared on the data boards. Jinho scanned the list and found his name. Team 7. He looked at his teammates and his heart sank. Bractor, a massive Kralix who had openly mocked Jinho since day one. Vess, a scaled reptilian who moved like lightning and never spoke to anyone she considered beneath her. Tal and Kess, twin warriors from a species that communicated through scent and seemed to view other beings as inferior. And Yor, a floating jellyfish creature who at least seemed neutral toward Jinho. No Torvik. No Rix. Just 5 beings who either disliked him or did not care if he lived or died. The first day of the Crucible began before dawn. Transport ships dropped each team in different parts of the wilderness. Team 7 landed in a rocky valley with steep cliffs on 3 sides. The air was thin and cold. Strange plants with purple leaves grew between the rocks. Bractor immediately took command. We moved to high ground. Set up defensive position. Complete objectives from there. Nobody disagreed. Jinho tried to offer a suggestion about the route, but Bractor cut him off. "You carry supplies, human. Leave tactics to warriors. The climb was brutal." The thin air made breathing difficult. Jinho's legs burned as he hauled the heavy supply pack up steep inclines. The others moved with ease, their stronger bodies handling the altitude without problems. They reached a plateau as the sun set. Bractor assigned watch shifts. Jinho got the middle shift, the worst one, where exhaustion hit hardest. The next 2 days followed the same pattern. The team completed their objectives, but Jinho was treated as cargo. During planning sessions, his input was ignored. During combat simulations against automated drones, he was told to stay back and don't get in the way. On the 4th day, everything went wrong. Another team ambushed them at dawn. Team 3, led by Corval, the Academy's top cadet. Corval was Thessian, built like a tank with dark red skin and natural armor. He was everything the Academy valued: strong, fast, skilled, confident. The ambush was perfect. Team 3 had the high ground. Bractor tried to organize a defense, but Vess took a stun round to the chest in the first seconds. She went down hard. Tal and Kess broke formation trying to flank, but Team 3 had anticipated that. They were separated and pinned down. "Retreat," Bractor shouted. "Fall back to the structure," they ran. Jinho helped drag the semi-conscious Vess while stun rounds zipped past his head. They reached an old stone building, maybe an ancient temple. The walls were thick. It was defensible, barely. Team 3 surrounded them. Corval's voice called out from the rocks. "Surrender now and I'll report that you fought well. Make me dig you out and everyone gets marked as failed." Bractor checked their supplies. Low on everything. Low on ammunition for the training weapons. Low on food. Low on water. Vess was recovering but would need hours to be combat ready. "What do we do?" Yor asked, his translated voice showing rare concern. "We hold until dawn," Bractor said. "Maybe they'll get bored and leave." Nobody believed that. Team 3 had them trapped. It was only a matter of time. Night fell. The team took turns sleeping while 2 kept watch. Jinho volunteered for the midnight watch along with Yor. The others were too exhausted to argue. Jinho sat by the window looking out at the darkness. His body ached. His mind was tired, but something was stirring inside him. A strange energy, like static electricity building before a storm. Maybe it was 5 weeks of constant training. Maybe it was the adrenaline of combat. Maybe it was the rage of being treated as useless. Whatever it was, Jinho felt different, alert, focused, ready. That was when he saw movement in the darkness, just a shadow but moving with purpose. "Someone was approaching the building, Yor," Jinho whispered. "Wake the others. We have an infiltrator." But there was no time. The shadow reached the wall. Jinho moved on instinct. He slipped out a side door and circled around. The infiltrator was Corval himself. The Thessian was trying to disable their defense sensors. "Take out the guards. Make the dawn assault easy." "Stop," Jinho said quietly. Corval turned. When he saw it was just Jinho, he actually laughed. The weak human. "What will you do? Punch me with your pitiful strength?" "If I have to." Corval did not even draw his weapon. He walked toward Jinho like a predator approaching prey. "I will make this quick. You can say you tried." They faced each other in the darkness. Corval was bigger, stronger, more experienced. He had never lost a fight at the Academy. Jinho thought about everything Hana had taught him. About human potential, about pushing past limits. about the survivors who refused to die. He thought about Earth, about a planet where early humans hunted animals 10 times their size, about warriors who fought even with broken bones, about the stubborn refusal to quit that defined his entire species. Korval struck first. A casual backhand meant to knock Jinho unconscious. But Jinho saw it coming. He had studied Thessian combat patterns. He ducked under the blow and countered with a strike to Korval's midsection. It was a good hit. Korval grunted in surprise, but he was wearing training armor. The blow did little. Korval's expression changed. Less amused now. He attacked seriously. His fists moved like pistons. Jinho dodged the first 2 strikes, but the third caught him in the ribs. Pain exploded through his chest. He tasted blood. Jinho hit the ground. His vision blurred. Every breath hurt. Korval stood over him, shaking his head. "You have courage, human. But courage is not enough." He turned away. "Stay down. I will tell the instructors you fought bravely." That was when something inside Jinho broke. Or maybe it was something that finally woke up. Humans have a word for it: berserker. The state where pain becomes distant, where exhaustion vanishes, where the body unlocks its emergency reserves and conscious thought fades, leaving only the will to survive. Jinho rose. His vision sharpened. His heart hammered, but his hands were steady. Every sense became clear. Korval heard him and turned back, surprised. Still standing? Impressive, but foolish. Jinho attacked. This time his movements were different. Faster, harder, more efficient. He was not thinking anymore. He was just moving, letting instinct guide him. Korval blocked the first strike. The second. The third hit home. Then the fourth. Jinho's fists moved in combinations he had practiced 10,000 times. Each strike carried more power than it should. His muscles contracted beyond normal limits. His bones absorbed impacts without breaking. His mind calculated angles while thought vanished. Korval's expression shifted to confusion, then concern. He tried to counter, but Jinho was already moving. A strike to the armor joint under the arm. A sweep to knock Korval off balance. A final blow to the center mass. The training armor registered critical hit. Korval stumbled backward, his eyes wide. "How?" he started to say. Jinho stood there, breathing hard, his knuckles bleeding. The berserker state was fading. Pain was returning. But he had won. Korval looked at him with something new. Respect. "You are stronger than you appear. Human." "I'm exactly as strong as I need to be," Jinho replied. Korval retreated into the darkness. The infiltration had failed. When dawn came, Team 3 withdrew without attacking. They had lost the element of surprise. The simulation rules said they had to move to their next objective. Team 7 had survived. Braktor found Jinho sitting against the wall, exhausted and bloody. The Kralik said nothing, but he nodded once. A warrior's acknowledgement to another warrior. Jinho closed his eyes and smiled. He had found it. The thing Hana talked about. The human ability to push past limits, to become more when everything demanded you become less. He had found the warrior inside himself. The teams returned from the Crucible 6 days later, exhausted and battered but alive. Medical staff waited at the landing pad. Hana found Jinho among the arrivals and pulled him aside for examination. Cracked rib, bruised knuckles, mild dehydration, she listed while scanning him. And according to your biometric monitor, you entered an extreme stress state 3 nights ago. Your heart rate hit levels that would kill most species. She looked at him with a mix of concern and pride. What happened out there? Jinho told her about the fight with Korval, about feeling something unlock inside him, about moving faster and hitting harder than he thought possible. Hana nodded slowly. You accessed your emergency reserves. Most humans never find that state. The ones who do usually become legends. She applied healing gel to his ribs. Rest today. Tomorrow the whole academy will be talking about you. She was right. By morning, the story had spread. The weak human had defeated Korval, the unbeaten champion. Some cadets said it was luck. Others said Korval had underestimated him. But a few looked at Jinho differently now. With curiosity, with caution, Korval himself approached Jinho in the cafeteria. The massive Thessian sat down across from him without asking permission. I have fought 1,000 battles, Korval said quietly. In the academy and simulations in real combat during border skirmishes. I have never been beaten by someone weaker than me. He stared at Jinho. But you are not weaker, are you? You just hide your strength. I don't hide it, Jinho replied. I just had to find it first, Korval stood. When we graduate and serve together, I would be honored to fight beside you, human. That afternoon, Vexnar summoned Jinho to the training hall, the same place where Jinho had been humiliated 6 weeks ago. The entire cadet class was assembled. Hundreds of beings packed the space, all watching. Jinho's stomach tightened. What was this? Vexnar stood by the reinforced combat wall, the massive duranium structure used to test maximum striking power. Every cadet tried it at some point. The strongest left dents they could point to with pride. Cadet Jinho Park, Vexnar announced. Step forward. Jinho walked through the crowd. Cadets parted to let him pass. He reached the combat wall and turned to face the instructor. 6 weeks ago you stood in this hall, Vexnar said, his voice carrying to every corner. You threw a punch that barely registered on our equipment. I laughed. Many laughed. You were the weakest cadet we had ever seen. Jinho said nothing. He could feel every eye on him. But weakness is not permanent, Vexnar continued. Strength can be built. Will can be forged. You have proven this in the Crucible. Now I wish to see how much you have grown. He gestured to the wall. Strike this wall with your full power. Jinho looked at the reinforced surface. Cadets had been hitting this wall for years. The strongest had left impressive dents, but nobody had ever damaged it seriously. It was designed to withstand punishment from even the most powerful species. His body still ached from the Crucible. His hands were barely healed. But Jinho stepped up to the wall. He set his stance, remembering everything he had learned. Weight distribution, hip rotation, energy transfer, breathing. He threw his punch. The impact echoed through the hall. The sensors registered the force. Numbers appeared on the display screen. They were much higher than his first attempt. Easily 10 times stronger than that humiliating day, but still not impressive compared to the strongest cadets. Still just a middle-range hit. Some cadets nodded approvingly. Good improvement. But nothing special. Vexnar studied the numbers. Then he looked at Jinho. Better. Much better. You have grown stronger through training and dedication, but I remember my words from your first day. His scarred face was unreadable. I chuckled at your weakness. Do you remember, human? Yes, sir. Show me I was wrong. Vexnar's eyes locked onto Jinho's. Punch again. The training hall went silent. Everyone understood what was happening. This was not just a test. This was a statement, a challenge. Jinho looked at his hand. The knuckles were already swelling from the first impact. His whole arm throbbed. The smart thing would be to refuse, to accept the decent performance and walk away with dignity. But humans did not conquer Earth by being smart. They conquered it by being too stubborn to die. Jinho thought about his journey. 6 weeks of mockery, 6 weeks of pain, 6 weeks of pushing his body beyond what seemed possible. He thought about Hana's lessons, about human potential, about the emergency reserves that let humans lift cars and run through fire and fight until their hearts stopped. He thought about his ancestors, the early humans who looked at mammoths and said, "We can take it," the warriors who fought with broken bones, the explorers who crossed oceans in wooden boats, the astronauts who strapped themselves to controlled explosions and rode them into space. He thought about the human motto that Hana had shared. Words carved into monuments back on Earth. Pain is temporary. Pride is forever. Jinho set his stance again. But this time he was not trying to throw a good punch. He was not trying to impress anyone. He was trying to find that state again. That moment in the darkness when he had fought Korval. That place where limits dissolved. He closed his eyes, breathed, found his center, and then he let go. Every safety his brain normally imposed vanished. Every limiter that protected his body from destroying itself disappeared. His legs drove through the floor like pistons. His hips rotated with perfect timing. His shoulder, arm, and fist became a single weapon moving at speeds that should not be possible without mechanical enhancement. A scream tore from his throat. Not a scream of pain. A war cry. The sound that humans made when they refused to accept defeat. When they decided that impossible was just another challenge. His fist hit the wall. The sound was like thunder. Like a bomb going off. The impact sensors overloaded and shut down. The entire wall shuddered. And then, in the absolute silence that followed, everyone heard it. A sharp crack. Then another. Then a dozen more. Cracks spread across the reinforced duranium surface like a spider web, from the impact point outward, across the unbreakable wall that had stood for 20 years without serious damage. Jinho staggered back. His hand was a mess. Blood dripped from split knuckles. The pain was incredible, but his face showed something between agony and triumph. The training hall was absolutely silent. Hundreds of cadets stared at the cracked wall, at the impossible thing that had just happened. Vexnar walked to the wall slowly. He ran his clawed hand over the cracks, deep fissures in the duranium, real structural damage. He turned to face the assembled cadets. "I chuckled at you once, human," he said, his voice solemn. "I will not make that mistake again." He raised his voice to a commanding boom. "Let this be a lesson to all of you. Never judge a species by their baseline. Judge them by what they become when they refuse to quit." He looked at Jinho. "You are dismissed, Cadet Park. Report to medical immediately." Jinho walked through the crowd. Cadets moved aside, but this time there was no mockery in their eyes. No pity, no dismissal. There was awe. There was respect. Some looked afraid. Torvik met him at the door. The Kralax placed one massive hand on Jinho's shoulder. "I doubted you, my friend. I will not doubt again." Hana was waiting at the medical bay. She treated his hand while shaking her head. "You're insane. You know that?" "Probably," Jinho agreed, wincing as she worked. "You also just made history. Nobody has ever damaged that wall. The engineers are going to study it. Your name will be in Academy records forever." She finished bandaging his hand. "How does it feel?" Jinho thought about it. The pain, the exhaustion, the pride. "It feels like I finally understand what it means to be human." That night, lying in his bunk with his hand throbbing despite the medication, Jinho smiled. Word was spreading beyond the Academy, to the military command, to the Interstellar Coalition, to Earth. The weak human had cracked the unbreakable wall. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy, and nobody would underestimate them again. The cracked wall became famous overnight. Engineers came from 3 different star systems to study it. They could not explain how a being of Jinho's size and apparent strength had generated enough force to damage military-grade duranium. The math did not work. The physics seemed impossible, but the wall was cracked. That was undeniable. Hana spent days explaining to curious researchers. She showed them human physiology studies. She explained stress adaptation. She talked about adrenaline and emergency reserves. She showed them videos of humans performing impossible feats under pressure. Mothers lifting vehicles, soldiers fighting with fatal wounds, athletes breaking records that scientists said could not be broken. The researchers listened. They studied. And slowly they began to understand. Humans were not strong because of what they were. They were strong because of what they could become. The Academy's approach to Jinho changed completely. Vexnar started using him as an example in lessons. Not an example of weakness. An example of growth, of what dedication could achieve. Other cadets approached him for advice. They wanted to know his training methods, his techniques, how he pushed past pain. Jinho shared everything he knew. He trained with Torvik, teaching the Kralax about human combat philosophy. He studied with Rix, combining their knowledge to develop new approaches. Even Braktor, who had treated Jinho like cargo during the Crucible, apologized. "I judged your species by appearance. I was wrong. You are a warrior." The remaining weeks at the Academy passed quickly. Combat training, strategy lessons, survival exercises. Jinho continued to improve. He would never be the fastest cadet or the strongest in raw power, but he developed a reputation for being dangerous, for being the one who never quit, the one who got stronger every time you beat him. Korval became an unlikely friend. They trained together often. The Thessian was fascinated by human potential. "My people have been warriors for 10,000 years, he said during one session. But we reached our peak long ago. Humans are still evolving, still adapting. In another 1,000 years, your species might surpass us all." Graduation came at the end of the 12th week. Jinho finished in the middle of his class rankings. Not at the top. Not at the bottom. Exactly average in most metrics. But his growth curve was unprecedented. From weakest to competitive, from mockery to respect. The instructors noted it in his permanent record. Exceptional adaptive capacity. Recommended for high-stress assignments. The day before graduation, Jinho visited the cracked wall one final time. The academy had preserved it behind protective glass. A monument to the impossible. Someone had added a plaque. It read, "The instructor chuckled at his weak punch. The wall cracked when he punched again. Private Jinho Park, first human graduate." A reminder that starting point does not determine destination. Hana found him there, staring at his achievement. "Proud?" she asked. "Grateful," Jinho replied. "If they had accepted me easily, I might never have found this." He touched the glass. "Pain made me stronger." "That's very human of you." Hana smiled. "I have news. The Defense Force is requesting more human recruits. Your success opened doors. There are 50 humans in the next academy class. By next year, there might be 500. Will they face the same challenges I did? Probably. The galaxy still does not understand humans. Each recruit will have to prove themselves." Hana looked at the cracked wall. "But they'll have your example. That helps." Jinho graduated with honors in adaptability and persistence. He was assigned to a mixed species battalion on the frontier. His reputation preceded him. The other soldiers had heard the story. Some were skeptical. Some were curious. All were watching. Years passed. Jinho rose through the ranks. Private became corporal. Corporal became sergeant. Sergeant became lieutenant. He fought in border skirmishes, led troops through impossible situations, survived battles that killed beings twice his size. And he was not alone. More humans joined the military every year. Each faced doubt, each was underestimated, and each proved that humans could not be judged by first impressions. The galaxy learned. Slowly, but they learned. Tactical manuals were updated. New sections appeared. When engaging human forces, do not assume early victories indicate final outcomes. Humans become more dangerous with each engagement. Adapt your strategy accordingly. Military academies across the galaxy started teaching about human psychology, about their refusal to accept defeat, about their ability to push past biological limits through sheer will. Some species found it terrifying. Others found it inspiring. All found it effective. 10 years after graduation, General Jinho Park commanded a battalion of 3,000 soldiers. Kralax, Thessian, Ven, and 200 humans. They were stationed on the border during the Velkari conflict, facing an enemy that outnumbered them 5-1. A young Kralax soldier named Breck approached Jinho one evening. Breck was fresh from the academy, nervous about the coming battle. "General, I heard you were weak when you started training. How did you become strong?" Jinho looked at the young soldier. He thought about that first day at the academy. The laughter, the humiliation, the moment he decided not to quit. "I did not become strong," Jinho said. "I discovered that I always was strong. I just needed to find it." He gestured to the mixed species troops around them. "Every being has potential. The question is whether you're willing to suffer to reach it. The other species are naturally stronger than us Kralax in many ways," Breck said quietly. "Sometimes I feel inadequate." "Good," Jinho replied. "Feeling inadequate means you know you can grow. The dangerous moment is when you think you're strong enough. That's when you stop improving." The battle came 2 days later. The enemy attacked at dawn. Jinho's battalion was outnumbered and surrounded. The situation was impossible. They won anyway. Later, military historians would study the battle. They would analyze Jinho's tactics, his use of terrain, his ability to inspire troops to fight beyond their limits. But those who were there knew the real reason. They had learned from humans. They had learned that impossible was negotiable. 20 years after his graduation, Jinho returned to the academy as a guest instructor. His hair showed gray now. His hands bore countless scars. But his eyes still held that same determination. New cadets gathered to hear him speak. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species, including 50 human recruits nervous and excited. Jinho stood before them and told his story. About being the weakest, about the laughter, about the cracked wall, about learning that strength was not about where you started, but about refusing to accept where others said you should stop. After the speech, he took the cadets to see the wall. It was still there, still cracked, still behind protective glass. New cadets of every species stopped to look at it. They read the plaque. They touched the glass. An instructor standing nearby was Vexnar. The old Thessian had retired from active duty but stayed at the academy to teach. He approached Jinho with slow steps. 20 years, Vexnar said. That wall reminds me every day not to judge too quickly. It reminds me that pain is temporary, Jinho replied. But what we achieve through pain lasts forever. They stood together watching the new cadets. Among them were not just humans now, but beings from all across the galaxy who had been underestimated, who had been called weak, who had decided to prove the universe wrong. You changed things, Jinho, Vexnar said quietly. Before you, we thought strength was about natural gifts. You taught us it was about will. I just showed up and refused to leave, Jinho said with a smile. That evening, Jinho watched the sunset from the academy grounds, 2 suns dipping below purple hills, alien plants swaying in the breeze. He thought about the frightened young man who had arrived here 2 decades ago. That version of himself seemed like a different person, but in a way he was the same, still stubborn, still refusing to quit, still believing that impossible was just another word for not yet achieved. A group of human cadets approached. They saluted nervously. One of them, a young woman named Suki, spoke. General Park, sir. We start training tomorrow. Do you have any advice? Jinho looked at them. He saw himself in their faces. The fear, the determination, the hope. Yes, he said. They will underestimate you. They will laugh. They will tell you that you cannot compete. Listen to them. Remember every word, and then prove them wrong. How, sir? By showing up every day. By training when others rest. By pushing when others quit. By understanding that being weak is not a permanent condition. It's just the starting point. He smiled. The galaxy judges you by your first punch. Make sure they remember your second one. The cadets saluted and left, chattering excitedly. Jinho watched them go. A new generation, ready to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. He touched his scarred knuckles, remembering the pain of that second punch. The crack that echoed through the training hall. The moment everything changed. 20 years later, that crack was still spreading. Through the military, through the galaxy, through every species that learned the lesson. Never underestimate the being who asks to try again. Because the second attempt is when humans become dangerous.